This is Keep On Cooking, a podcast for people who love cookbooks and want to know more about the authors. It's also a great place to get a weekly dose of culinary inspiration to keep things pumping in the kitchen. So grab a cookbook and keep on cooking. I'm Dustin Harder, and this is Keep On Cooking. Hello and welcome to Keep On Cooking, the only podcast dedicated to plant-based cookbooks. I'm your host, Dustin Harder, and he's a complex human being as real as they come. I tell you, it's my husband and podcast associate, David Rossetti. How are you, love?
Me, complex.
And real.
And real.
You're real human. You're real.
And sometimes real complex.
Yes, sometimes real complex.
Too complex, but
no. You're wonderful. All around. I love you, complexities and all.
I love your complexities. And your complexion.
Sometimes. Listen, today we're talking bread,
We're
y'all.
talking bread.
We're talking bread.
I would say maybe our most favorite topic.
Or favorite topic, favorite food. Can't keep it in the house. We no longer keep like loaves of bread in the house
because it's a vehicle for everything.
I mean, and again, we've talked about this on this podcast. The sad thing is like if I want bread, I will make it.
Correct.
I have made literal loaves of fresh bread.
If I can usually tell his temperament. So like if something has happened,
really,
and I come home and there is like your crazy bread.
Oh,
I know something has happened.
That one's
like,
a quick one.
Oh, we're eating feelings
Do you
tonight.
think?
Like this, I think so. Yes.
I never noticed that, but I'm sure it's
well,
true.
I mean, it
I'm
usually
thinking...
is the end of a week. So the end of the week,
that's...
like on Friday, like we're kind of like settling down, and we don't usually go out, so we're like sitting down, and then I'll be sitting on the couch with you, and you'll leave the couch, and like 15-20 minutes will go by while watching a show, and I'm like, where is he?
Well,
and
then
the oven's on, and then you're rolling out bread.
Yep. Well, because usually it's been proofing, and you didn't even know bread was like
Correct.
proofing for 2 hours. Also, today I want to make bread, and I don't know if it's just because I've been so focused on this book, but I want to make bread today. So. I mean, it may happen.
This.
I don't know. I'm still on my soft diet, so I don't know. Listen, I love it. I can't get enough of bread, especially this book. BReD, B-R-E-D, Sourdough Loaves, Small Breads, and Other Plant-Based Baking, written by Ed Tatton with Natasha Tatton. Their team reached out to me many months ago as they were planning their book launch because this book literally just came out last week. And I got to tell you, I'm obsessed.
And for good reason. The book is gorgeous.
Yes.
It is full of like amazing pottos, including tutorial photos. Yep. Step-by-step guides for getting that sourdough starter rolling, and tons of education and insight from Ed Tatton and his wife, Natasha Tatton.
Now, before we get into it, I do have the Tattons. I do have their hummus cookies. So this becomes a big topic of conversation in the interview because it was on the menu for a long time, I guess, at BReD, their bakery, which we talk a lot about. And then it has not been on the menu. And somehow in the process of the interview, I got it. I'm going to take credit. I got it back on the menu. No, I don't think it was me. I can't recall how it went about it.
All kinds of fan mail.
Yes, we'll take all the accolades and thank yous for their hummus cookie. But let's try it. Let's give it a shot.
It's a gorgeous cookie.
Oh my
I will
God.
say,
and it's
like
just
looks
so fluffy. And it almost reminds me of like if a lemon poppy seed muffin were a cookie, this would be what that was.
I would really love anything with sesame seeds. Sesame seeds.
Sorry for everyone listening. I never eat on the podcast, but we're doing it.
ASMR.
Oh.
Wow. Yeah, that's really good.
Like I said, delicate and fluffy, like a little pillowy puff of hummus with some sugar in there. So it's like a sweet hummus. And then it's got sesame seeds all over it for some texture too.
Get that away from us.
Oh my gosh. I want all of them.
So good.
I have all this dough in the fridge. What are we going to do, David? We got to give cookies to people.
We're going to bake them out.
I guess our neighbors are getting cookies today. This cookie is so good. It's the hummus cookie. Ed has said now, you'll hear it on the podcast. So everyone who's a fan of bread in Whistler, they're putting it back on the menu. And now he's probably amazing. Like, Dustin, stop saying that.
It's out there now.
Yeah, it's out there now. But yeah, we're going to make cookies for our neighbors today. It's going to be a thing because these cookies are absolutely delicious. And they're in the gluten-free chapter. So they have a whole chapter dedicated to gluten-free, which, of course, we get into. But it gets better. As I dove deeper into researching the episode, I was able to discover just how wonderful these humans are in addition to making delicious baked goods. And that's always such a beautiful, beautiful bonus. And it warms my heart up so much. That has been the best part about being in the vegan world. I think you can agree with this, David. When we were filming the Vegan Roadie, as we do this podcast, we meet people who are out there doing the good to make the world better, one baked good at a time, one bite at a time, just really using food as activism and treating their employees well, treating their customers well. And Ed and Natasha are just fantastic all around. They run a business with a compassionate mission.
So, and they are originally from Kent in the UK. Ed has always worked in fine dining kitchens around the world and has been making sourdough since 2008. Ed and Natasha moved to Canada in 2013 to snowboard for a season. See how that went. They both worked in hospitality, and Ed worked in a farm-to-table restaurant, Alta Bistro in Whistler, BC.
While working on Vancouver Island farms in the summer of 2014, Ed started a sourdough culture that he took with him back to the Alta Bistro and implemented a BReD program for the restaurant.
Back in 2016, Ed rented the bistro's kitchen and once a week made breads for his friends, and subsequently they told their friends, and before long, demand had increased to the point where Ed had outgrown the equipment.
And that's when Ed and his wife, Natasha, decided to team up and start planning to open a 100% plant-based organic sourdough bread shop in Creekside, Whistler. Natasha admired Ed's dedication to making tasty artisan loaves, and Ed knew that Natasha's background as an English teacher and examiner, as well as a string of hospitality jobs over the years, would come in useful for starting a food and beverage business.
No, that's great. They both believe that you shouldn't make food for other people that you wouldn't eat yourself. The bread shop and plant-based bakery sells loaves for pickup in store and a selection of small baked items. And espresso-based coffees are also available in the bread shop. Direct trade, Australian-inspired, Vancouver roasted, smooth, rich, and balanced, deep chocolate syrupy sweetness and cherry-like fruitiness espresso coffees you can match with oat, almond, soy, or coconut milk alternatives to cow's milk.
You did it, babe.
Boom.
You did it. Oh, I love that. So we often pull these abouts from the author's websites and stuff. And that was a beautiful, such great wording. I love it. But chocolate syrupy sweetness. So I want to try and say Australian inspired, Vancouver roasted, smooth, rich, and balanced, deep chocolate syrupy. It must be syrupy. I see that word in there and I'm like, syrupy. I'm going to get tripped up. I'm going to get tripped up. What David and I talk about, starting a business all of the time, a food business specifically. And we always get very daunted when we look at the overall picture of it all, because it is hard, demanding work. And people say to me all the time, well, when are you going to open a blah, blah, blah? You should do this. You should do that. You know, the you shouldas in the world, right? People telling you should do this and you should do that. And when David and I really think about it, when we have a good idea, then we have designed logos before. We would start putting business plans together. And then we kind of step back and we're like, okay, what do we want our life to look like, right? And does that fold into it? But then what happens sometimes is we meet people like Ed and Natasha and we get inspired all over again.
Yeah, and they do it.
Yeah, they do it. And they're out there making the world a better place, one loaf of bread at a time. And now you can have their collection of irresistible sourdough loaves, small breads, and other plant-based bakes in your home. Here to tell us all about it, please welcome my new superheroes, Ed and Natasha Tatton. They have a passion for compassion, and they bring it to life daily with their vegan and organic sourdough bakery by the name of BReD in Whistler, British Columbia. Please welcome to the Keep On Cooking podcast, Ed and Natasha Tatton. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's great to
Yes. Fantastic. I'm thrilled you're here. I love bread, so I love talking about bread. But first, we're going to dive into your icebreaker question. What is a book you have read more than once? And if there's not one where you haven't read it more than once, is there one or perhaps there's one you're looking forward to reading again?
Does it have to be food related?
Nope.
No. So I once read Autobiography of a Yogi,
Okay.
and I know that book was just action packed and I can't really remember that much. So I've always wanted to delve back into that one. I've got it behind me on the shelf somewhere. So that's one I'd like to read again.
You know that you enjoyed it enough that you want to read it again, and there was a lot in it to absorb, it sounds like.
That's it. Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Mine would be similar to Natasha's, but it is a bit more food related. But I remember it being packed full when I was talking to a friend the other night about it. Would be Kitchen Confidential.
Okay.
Yep. Anthony Bourdain. So I mean, like, and my brother listened to that book audio style with Anthony talking it. So he said that was like a different way as well. So I think that's what brought it up.
Great. That's very good. Mine is a series. It's a series of books, but I guess, I mean, I'll say the first one, but it's Tales of the City by Armistead Maupin. So it's sort of like queer culture in the 70s and 80s in San Francisco, and these fictional characters that he brought to life, but sort of through his own story. And I have read it a couple times already, but I would go back and read it again. Why not? But we're here today to talk about your fabulous new book, BReD, Sourdough Loaves, Small Breads, and Other Plant-Based Baking. And as we're recording this, it just came out a couple days ago. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, freshly baked.
Yeah, freshly baked. How does it feel to have it out in the world finally, this beautiful book?
Very surreal. We went to a couple of bookstores in Vancouver on publication day, and it was very strange because the shelves weren't just packed, they were everywhere. There was like piles on like tables.
Cool.
So it was really cool to see it.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. It's a gorgeous book, and just, I mean, hefty book, everybody. If I'm find myself without any weights in my house and I need to work out, I know I can like lean on this book for a little action. And so it's your pub week. Happy pub week. Very exciting. And it's out there in the world, and you having been a professional chef, you've worked in high-end kitchens in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. And Natasha, you're an English teacher turned bakery manager. You've taught English all over the world. Together, you took all of your skills and you founded BReD, a bakery in Whistler, specializing in vegan, organic sourdough baked goods. Your bakery looks just outstanding online, offering healthy, naturally leavened sourdough, whole grain, and plant-based products from scratch that are baked fresh daily. Ed, as cooking is part of your history, was it always vegan? And if not, when did that sort of come into play for you?
Totally. Yeah, it wasn't always vegan. Far from it. I was, French trained, went to culinary school, trained in sort of Michelin star restaurants. It was very much nose to tail cookery, very heavy emphasis on seasonal cookery, but a lot of butchery and, cutting up fish and all sorts of things. So it was very connected to, animal products. And I didn't go vegan till about 7 years ago.
Okay.
But Natasha's been vegetarian most of her life. So at home, we always ate a heavy vegetarian diet, and it was more of a treat when I would go out to actually consume it myself. But there was definitely a connection there. And for me, it was Natasha went vegan first, but it was a health sort of drive that made the decision to go vegan. I have a stent in my aorta, so I've had cardiovascular sort of issues since I was very young. So, the more you find out, dairy was the first one to go for me. I was on a lot of medication and wanted to make that sort of change and reduce that amount of medication. So yeah, it was kind of, from 7 years ago going vegan, and almost once I went, it was kind of a ripple effect and everything went from there.
Yeah. Wow. And you said you've had the cardiovascular issues from a younger age. Did your doctors were they ever pinpointing any sort of food as medicine for you, or no, not at all?
No, not at all. Unfortunately, I didn't meet the right doctors. A lot of doctors, they sort of get a minimal amount of nutritional education in their training. So a lot of it was my own research, but I think most people know that dairy clogs our arteries.
Right.
It's pretty common. I was quite happy to switch to oat milk with coffee, but I definitely still consumed butter and cheese. They're very addictive. So it's pretty normal for that.
Yeah.
But with baking, it's definitely a tricky move, but I saw that as a challenge.
Yeah.
So I like that.
and you rose to the challenge with not just the bakery, but also this book. And Natasha, what about the bakery? So opening the bakery, was this always a dream of yours to go from teaching English to running a bakery, or how has that unfolded? Is that part of the coupledom together, or were you, how did the bakery feel for you when this came about?
Yeah, so I've always dipped in and out of the hospitality industry to
Okay.
my income. My first hospitality gig was when I was 17. I worked in a private hospital as a ward waitress. And then I did various things. I've worked in like catering companies doing events. I've done, I worked in a bar where I met Ed as a cocktail waitress. He was a chef. We were both studying at the time, 20 years ago. I worked in the best vegetarian restaurant in the UK in 2008. And so I've had a lot of different jobs in that industry, but teaching English was my sort of 9 to 5.
Yep.
And I really loved helping people from all over the world achieve their goals. A lot of what I did was training people to get to university in English speaking countries. And I did examining as well, where people who have to get visas have to do like English language tests. And I was quite focused on helping people. But then while I was an English teacher, I kind of transitioned to being vegan. And then I kind of wanted to help the animals more than the people at the end. And I was already starting to think about or dream of a concept, a sort of vegan cafe.
Okay.
Community hub where people would come and eat plant-based food. And it just coincided with Ed starting to bake bread for the community, and then basically quite aggressively telling us, you have to open a bakery. I don't want to wait once a week to get this bread. Like, I want this every day. Like, when are you going to open a bakery? And we were kind of like, okay, yeah, a bakery. Like, we, you know, when the demand's there,
Yeah.
you can't really ignore it if it's a business idea. And we're kind of, okay, yeah, bakery. And then we thought, well, it's going to have to be vegan because we're vegan, and we don't want to put our money, you know, where our ethics aren't. You know, if we're ethically vegan, we don't want to harm any animals unnecessarily. We don't want to contribute to that. So we were kind of like, at first we were like, wow, like, are we going to tell everyone it's vegan or not? And so we're a little bit stealthy in the beginning, and we just kind of put a nice subtle 100% plant-based little label on the door. But when you come in the bakery, you don't see the word vegan written anywhere really, unless we're selling someone else's product.
Sure.
You know, and when everything's vegan, there's no need to put like vegan cake, vegan.
Right.
Vegan.
It's just cake.
It's just like, see it on the door. And some people don't, because they just come on in, they just see the lineup and follow everyone else.
Follow their nose.
They just follow they smell the cinnamon buns. And a lot of people, you know, just started buying the products, and took them a while to realize it was vegan.
Yeah.
Which was the best thing, really, because if they'd seen the word vegan, they might have been put off.
Right.
But now, as we're known to be vegan, we've stepped into our vegan because we found so many people looking for it. And we decided that, you know, we're the only coffee shop in town that's safe for dairy allergy sufferers. So those people especially come to us. You know, there's one lady, she's actually a doctor. She said her son comes out in hives if he stands anywhere near an espresso steam wand. She said his allergy is more skin-based than internal. Weirdly enough, allergies are weird things. But for those people, it's great word of mouth advertising, because they know other people with allergies, and they tell everyone else, oh, go there. You know, it's cross-contamination free. So we've really stepped into being vegan. We're proud vegans, and our community are all on board with it as well.
I love it. Proud vegans. It's so interesting because in the world of vegan food and being someone in vegan food, there's a time where we felt like almost like, oh, we can't say it, or we need to hide it, or it's this thing. And it's like, why am I ashamed to say I'm vegan when it just means that, like, I kind of want things to be better for everyone. Like, that's it, you know?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And now we're finally reaching that space where that's more understood, and people are feeling less sort of defensive when it comes up, which is great. And in your mission statement online for BReD, you say all the things I want to hear, including sustainability, integrity, commitment, innovation, adaptability. And the bullet point I love the most is putting the staff first. And it's obvious on the surface level what that means, but can you tell our listeners, I just think this is so important, what it means for you and your staff at BReD to put the staff first?
So first thing is not overworking people and offering, you know, some degree of flexibility as much as you can, making sure people get adequate breaks. A lot of people in the hospitality industry are expected to work with no break. This is still very common today. But we always make sure our staff get the legal amount of breaks, holidays, etc. We pay them significantly above minimum wage, about 25% above minimum wage, to make sure they're getting a living wage, or even more if they're like with us long term. Everybody gets access to medical wellness benefits, whether they're part-time, full-time, whether they've been with the company a month or a year. We've offered like a pension matching. So, you know, we've offered our staff that if they pay into the pension, we'll match their amount up to $3,000 a year. So we have a lot of incentives. We do a ski pass retention bonus. If they're with us to the end of the season, we repay their ski pass. They get free bread while they're, you know, every shift. So we do regular staff events to sort of keep team dynamic high and, you know, to reward our staff, to thank them for their hard work, to motivate them. So we do loads of stuff. We've actually got B Corp status. So we've had all of these aspects checked by a third party. They go through your payroll. They look at what the highest earner earns compared to the lowest earner. And we have a very small gap because we have very equal pay amongst the team, which is easy to do in a small business, to be honest. So we just loads of things like that, really. Just doing, basically, we are the employers that we never had. When we look back on people we worked for, we're like, well, we were kind of exploited, you know. And we didn't have the balls that these younger generation have got to try and actually demand stuff. You know, we stuff like, I might ask somebody to work and they'll just put their foot down and say, absolutely not. That's my boyfriend's birthday. I'm not going to work that day. And I could never have dreamt of saying that. I remember like waiting like 2 months to find out if I had my birthday off with one boss. As I said, it's giving people some of that flexibility and as much as you can. I mean, it's difficult because the business has to be open every day.
Business has to business. Yeah.
So it is a bit of a struggle and a balance sometimes, but we do our best. And that's really all we can do. But we're definitely not trying to exploit anybody or take them for granted.
Well, and a happier staff means happier customers, period. So then you're building a happier community all around. So that's really great. And also I heard free bread. So I'm already happy just hearing those two words together. That really checks out for me. Well, I have the last question before we dive into the book is, so you have the vegan business, you have the vegan book. What do you remember? I mean, I don't know, since you're such a trained chef, really, you've done so many great things in the industry, but did you ever get like a first vegan cookbook, like someone's book that to you to this day where you're still like, I love that vegan cookbook, like another author's book? Is there a book that spoke to you when you started exploring vegan food?
There's definitely one for Natasha.
Yeah, right? I was the first person to buy a vegan cookbook when I was vegetarian, and I bought it about the same time I worked in the vegetarian restaurant, so about 2008.
Okay.
It was written by activists. It's not a mainstream book, but it has a picture of a protest on the front of it, like a cartoon drawing, and it's called Another Way is Possible. And it's really quite explicit, like the introduction. It basically says things like, society eats shit, and you know, there's and basically just goes like fully into, like, it's very political. And it was kind of a bit like, eyebrow raising for me when I first got it. There are some really good recipes in there that I still cook to this day, like an African peanut sweet potato stew. And even my very carnivorous mother-in-law loves that recipe.
Amazing. Winner.
Recently as well. So I've shared it around and it gets really good feedback.
Totally. I would say for me, it wasn't so much a book, but I remember definitely going to Matthew Kenny's restaurant, Plant Food and Wine in LA, and just being blown away, just being like, this is like plant-based fine dining. It can be done. You know, the textures and flavors were incredible. The service was just as good. So I definitely remember that. But really, without being arrogant, our cookbook was a book that we wrote that we wanted.
Yes.
Like, love that. About like previous sort of bosses, like taking all the good elements from people's books or bad elements that we didn't like, and improving them or putting them together.
That's great. Well, then let's get into it. This is BReD, sourdough loaves, small breads, and other plant-based baking. In the introduction, you dive into your history a bit, vegan influences, vegan as the new normal, and then we get into vegan baking and you tackle some basic ingredient guidelines like buttermilk, cream, and chocolate. You also get into striving for zero waste, gluten, types of flour, tools, and equipment. And then we get to the heart of this book from the jump, the sourdough starter guide. So tell us, what is sourdough and how do we make the perfect loaf of sourdough bread?
That is a very big question.
It is. It is.
So essentially, it's a culture. So they call them mothers. It's flour and water and bacteria. So it's a colony of bacterias and microbes and yeasts and everything like that that's in our air and on our hands and in the flour. It's everywhere. And it's the way that we made bread for thousands of years, up until about 1930, when they started to introduce commercial yeast. But prior to 1930, this is the way all bread was made. And essentially, you have this flour, water, almost like a pancake batter, and you feed it every day, or you can store them in the fridge and use them once a week. So we go through in the book how to grow a sourdough starter, but then also how to maintain it and keep it for your schedule. Because some people don't want to make bread every day.
Sure. And then I saw you've got it where you can do the process in days, but isn't there a 12-hour version I think I saw in there as well? Am I making that up?
No, so there's a 12-hour feed. So that's what we do at the bakery.
Okay.
So you feed it twice a day. That's quite aggressive. That's kind of like if you want to make bread every day. A lot of people, like I said, would sort of keep it in the fridge once a week and then bring it out, feed it a couple of times on that 12-hour feed. And then it just gets it more active. So keep it in the fridge basically just means the microbes go a bit more dormant.
Got it.
Like putting them to sleep almost. And then you wake them back up a couple of feedings on that schedule. And then you'll see it becomes active and grows almost like a bread. And you take a part of that, add it to your dough. And that's what levains, which is the yeast in the bread.
Yes, yes. Everybody, you get a detailed guide of this in the book, including pictures and everything that goes along with it. So that's reason alone, just in the first bit of the book there to pick up this book. But we're going to get into even more here. The first recipe section is sourdough loaves. Natasha, do you have a favorite sourdough loaf from this chapter?
I probably would say sesame miso is one of my favorite sourdoughs.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed. I mean, all of the breads are great, but that one I think is especially delicious. Yeah, I'm a bit of a sucker for 100% rye bread.
He said one. You can't.
Sorry.
Excuse
No, Ed, please. We can have a 1 and a 2 there. That's fine.
Yeah.
Mine probably would be the boreal loaf, which is really unusual, and we did that as a sort of fun, just bread to do. It has morel mushrooms in there, which are like dried, and then it's a pretty cool loaf.
Pine bark.
It has like pine bark flour.
Okay.
It's kind of just one of those obscure breads that I'd never tasted. My friend gave me this pine bark flour and said, "You've got to try it out." And my other friend foraged some morel mushrooms, but there are alternatives that you can use. Like you can use other mushrooms, and you don't have to use the pine bark flour.
Sure.
So it's kind of like a fun, and we called it the boreal loaf because of the boreal forest that runs around the globe. All those ingredients are found within the boreal forest.
Okay. And would you say pine bark flour?
Pine bark flour, yeah. So
what is that?
So it's the young pine, like the bark, and essentially they treat it, heat treat it, and then blend it, and it has this really. It sounds strange, like woody flavor, like earthy sort of flavor, and it goes really nicely with the mushrooms.
Okay.
But that toasted, with some like avocado or something is insane.
I'm going to be so hungry when this episode's over. For someone just starting on their sourdough journey, is there one they should try to tackle first in this chapter?
100%. I would recommend the country sourdough, which is the first bread in the book. It's a classic sort of 40% whole grain loaf every day. You can use it for toast, for sandwiches. And that's definitely a great one to do, because I always recommend that you make that recipe like 10 times before you start moving on to the other, because then you can notice like little differences with, you know, the heat of your oven or the heat of the temperature of the water, and you can make those little adjustments. Whereas I find if you jump around all the different chapters and different breads, you might not sort of hone it in. So I feel like that's a really good one to sort of practice, share with a neighbor or with a friend, or just keep it for the week. You know, make 2 loaves, you've got bread for the week.
That makes sense. That makes sense to start on it, kind of get your bearings with it and get used to it. And there's lots of other great sourdough loaves in here. We've got 100% whole wheat sourdough, 50% whole grain country sourdough, toasted sunflower seed and flaxseed sourdough, mega multi-seed sourdough, porridge sourdough, sprouted buckwheat with 10% whole grain buckwheat flour, the stout and potato sourdough, marinated olive, garlic, cornmeal porridge, and herb sourdough. So many great things. And this takes us next into the small breads chapter. So what is meant by a small bread? What is a small bread?
We just wanted to sort of separate it a little bit from the loaves. So in there is like baguettes, pita bread, naan bread, burger buns. So just smaller, either individual sort of breads or like the baguette where you would slice it. So yeah, we just tried to sort of change it and separate it out in that way.
That makes sense. It looks like you've got pizza doughs in here as well, and seeded bagels, and then naan bread, English mushrooms, muffins. Sorry, English muffins. But put some English mushrooms on them, perhaps. Some English muffins, porcini mushrooms. See, the words were right next to each other. It's been a long day. It's been a long day. But you got the porcini mushroom and thyme grissini, and focaccia is in here as well. Is there a favorite in the small breads section, a favorite among the bread bakery recipes that's in here?
Mine would be the burger buns, I think.
The burger buns were really good.
It's the best burger bun I've ever had. Like I find in a lot of burger places or wherever you eat burgers, it's usually just like an overly sweet brioche, or it's like one of those buns that just sort of disintegrates as you eat it. Like there's often not a lot of thought put into a burger bun.
Sure.
And so we've got a burger bun that's really soft inside and then crunchy on the outside with lots of texture from seeds as well. And it stays together. It doesn't disintegrate in your hand.
And we did a cool thing actually when we developed that recipe. We brought it out, we tested it, and then we launched it for Father's Day, because we're like, you know, they love like barbecues and everything like that, but we were kind of like a bit tactical about it, and we said you can only buy the buns if you buy vegan burgers.
Yeah, we teamed up with a vegan burger company because we hate the thought of people putting like meat on our bread.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the reasons that we don't do any wholesale local restaurants or hotels, is because we know that they're just going to put like a big meat sandwich, that's a Montreal smoked meat something. And we were like, no, we don't want that. So we only sold the burger buns if you bought.
And they sold really well. It was a bit of
great.
You know, we can't normally do it with all our other loaves.
They're like, can you just sell the buns without the burgers? I was like, absolutely not.
No, they were
great burgers. You know, we believed in these patties. Yeah. It was a local Vancouver company.
Yeah.
A really cool collab to do. So
I love that approach too. I mean, just a great way to be like, you can buy them, but you also got to do this. And then maybe they love the burger, and now that's the burger they turn to, which is the whole point of it, right? So I love that. Our next chapter is sweet sourdough with delicious offerings like dark chocolate, cherry, cocoa, and red wine sourdough, and chai spice pumpkin sourdough donuts filled with cranberry and raspberry jam. I have a big sweet tooth, so I'm in love with this section and want to make all of the things, especially with the holidays around the corner, of course. But what's a favorite sweet sourdough for each of you from this chapter?
You just named both of ours, I think. Mine's the red wine marinated.
Great minds.
Yeah, chocolate sourdough. And I know that Ed's
the donut.
Ed's always talking about these donuts.
Yeah, I love the sugar on the outside with the spice. Like you said, it's just so, you know, the fall and the winter is like perfect time to eat that. But we don't make them at the bakery. That was one of the recipes that was fun to develop, because we just can't fry at the bakery. We don't have a big hood vent. We have a different sort of extraction system. But also, I think it's a good thing that we don't make donuts, because Tash and I would be like £500 each.
Yeah, we made those once.
Just to eat 5 a day.
We got to a Thanksgiving years ago, and we didn't want to go to the turkey bit, so we just thought we'd go late and bring dessert.
Oh, smart.
Yeah. So I made like...
Y'all are very strategic in some of your moves here. I'm learning a lot.
I know.
You turn up with donuts and people don't care that you're late.
Yeah, no.
Everyone's best friend. And I made like this little vegan Baileys I had. So we turned up with our vegan Baileys and pumpkin donuts with cranberry jam inside and chai spice sugar, and people were obsessed. And they're, you know, they said the classic thing like, "This is vegan. I can't believe it doesn't even taste vegan."
You're like, well, because it's just good food.
So yeah, exactly.
Get into it. Speaking of good food, let's give a couple more titles from here. We've got this orange cardamom and olive oil brioche with toasted hazelnuts, toasted walnut and golden black raisin sourdough, roasted apple and vanilla custard filled buns with an oat and almond crumble. I mean, sourdough cinnamon buns, wild blackberry and walnut sticky buns. Just such good. And the photos in here too. I mean, not everyone's watching. A lot of people are listening. But there's, and I keep trying to find, because there's some whole pages on it, but you give some great tutorial photos on it in here, just so people can really get a hands-on look, which I think is so important in a book like this, to give people that step-by-step. Sometimes there's cookbooks, I get that, and I see a step-by-step and I'm like, I don't know if we needed to take up page space with this, but a book like this, I think it's so beneficial and so helpful. So it really serves as sort of a, you know, I'm going to say textbook, but I don't mean in a boring way. I mean in a very like informative way, which is great. Yeah. Well, sticking with sweets, the next chapter is cakes, muffins, and scones. So, Ed, is there a recipe in this chapter that you've been making for years that you knew just had to be in this book?
It's the cakes, probably the carrot cake. Actually, the carrot cake is my first cake that I developed from a combination of different recipes, and it has changed over the years, but it was the first cake I made that was dairy free. So originally it did have eggs in it, but as I sort of went vegan and plant-based, took those out and switched it around, you know, tweaked the spices and things like that. But I've been making that cake for about 15 years. I remember when we lived in New Zealand, I'd sort of, it'd be my turn to clean the house. So I'd do all my chores, clean the house in a house share. There was like 6 of us, and I'd make a cake, and my housemates were just like, I want to live with you forever. Like, who are you? Who does all the chores?
I was going to say, yeah. And then also, let's just have you do the chores every time then, because there's going to be a cake at the end of it. So I think you should have gotten out of having to do chores because you were making the cake, honestly. Like, come on.
It is. It's when you clean up the kitchen, then you're like, I want to christen that, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Cooking, yeah.
Well, Natasha, managing the front of house team, is there a recipe in this section that is a favorite among the front of house crew?
Oh, they just love everything.
I mean,
like literally, like,
I understand. I haven't even tried it, and I can see why.
Exciting, because when we do a new thing and we get everybody to try it, we want their like critical feedback, because customers will give you critical feedback. You know, when they're paying for it, they have a certain expectation, but staff are so used to eating just lovely, delicious things. And they're just so grateful for that they don't really give us feedback. So anything that we make, they just kind of always say like, yeah, it's good, and stuff their face. But I wish they would be a little bit more critical, to be honest.
I think we're the most critical, because we're like, oh, we need to tweak the sugar, or we need to tweak the spice. They're just like, what are you talking about? It tastes great.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, well.
all these recipes were rigorously tested and given to friends and customers and things like that, because a lot of it was done towards the end of the week. We're closed on Monday, Tuesday, so Sunday afternoons, a lot of those sort of lucky customers or friends got some extra things to try. So,
well, when you say customers too, I'm curious, when we look at cakes, muffins, and scones, so front of house staff likes it all. What about customers? Is there a customer favorite in this section?
Customers are interesting because they usually just like, they like to see new stuff.
Okay.
So there'll be people that always try the new thing, but then there's also people that they like to see new things. They like to think that they're interesting people that try new things, but actually they always go back to the same old, same old. So people will come in and they'll go like, what's the special sourdough today? Or what's new on the menu? Or what's this? And I'll stand there and I'll give this long explanation. Oh, this is the thing. And we've got these local so-and-sos from this farm and we foraged this and we've done this. And they'll literally just go, I'll just get the chocolate cookie like I always get, or whatever it is. And it's really frustrating, but you have to have new stuff. And there's, as I said, people that want new stuff and they're just happy to try anything that's new. And then we've got our signature recipes like the cinnamon buns and the chocolate cookies. They are like diehard menu items that can never come off the menu.
Yeah.
But we switch up the cakes, the muffins, and we do other cookies and different types of sticky buns, like the blackberry sticky bun with walnuts on top. We just make that when we can forage local blackberries. And we love doing that one because blackberries in the Pacific Northwest are an invasive species. And so, you know, sometimes when you forage something like mushrooms, you have to be careful where you go because you can get in trouble for foraging on certain but actually with blackberries, because they're invasive, like no one minds if you're picking all of those blackberries and eating them and, you know, filling your pockets. And it's also quite funny because we'll do it in like quite remote places, but there'll be like dog walkers sometimes and they'll just see the bushes moving and people think we're bears, but and I quite like sort of doing that to people as well.
Scaring people.
I like scaring people. Yeah, don't worry, it's just us taking buckets of blackberries.
Yeah. You're like, I'm nice to customers all day long. When I'm out here,
Yeah,
I will be scaring you. That's so good. Well, I think too, I mean, I get it. So like, if especially if you have a regular and they love a particular thing and they come in and their mind's sort of on that, but then they want to know what you have going on. I'm like, well, they need to take a buddy with them so they can order the regular thing, order the special thing, and then split it between the two of them. That's why I'm grateful. My husband's not that picky when it comes to like food and what he wants usually, so I can be like, well, let's get like that one and that one. He's like, great, and we'll just share them. Fantastic. So you just gotta have a buddy to share it with. It helps out.
but he loves pizza, right?
Loves pizza. Yes.
I remember you guys doing something on Instagram and he was like, your favorite food, and pizza was like straight there.
Loves pizza, but he doesn't like mushrooms, which kills me all the time. But
so you're doing half and half.
Yes, but it's a work in progress. I just put it in everything now because I was like, I can't do this for you all the time. Like, I love mushrooms and like I'm testing a recipe. I can't make half of it with that, you know. So he's used to it now. But I'll look over. He's very good at like, I mean, I will have mushrooms like fully in something, and he will have picked them all out, and they're sitting on this. I'm like, how did you even find them all? Like, I don't know how you did that. It's like he's got a little magnifying glass out.
Mushroom dal.
My goodness. But let's tell people more about some of the cakes, muffins, and scones in here. We got banana, fig, and Brazil nut cake, caramelized plum and lemongrass upside down cake, espresso coffee cake. And then we've got that spiced carrot walnut cake you told us about, Jamaican rum and ginger cake, raspberry, lemon, and coconut cake. That's gotta be like, that's like a triple threat right there.
Yeah, it's pretty dangerous.
That was the cake I always made for people's birthdays. Whenever it was someone's birthday, I'd do that as like a round birthday cake. And
then she said I stole it and improved it.
Yeah, he does that. So I'll make a recipe and it will get good feedback, and then Ed will come along and make it better, which is it's kind of bittersweet. It's like it's a compliment because he wanted to make it, but then it's annoying because he makes it better. So that's how lots of the recipes came about.
And you're like, I thought it was pretty good the first time, but fine. Yeah. Okay, that is better. Fine. Okay, I got it. Oh, such good stuff. This can you tell me more about the organic Pemberton rhubarb muffins?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of rhubarb.
Me too.
Yeah, it's such a underused fruit. Yeah, and it's just packed full of flavor. It's got great texture. And it almost acts, because it is kind of like when you cook it down, it becomes a bit starchy. It kind of helps as a sort of egg replacer almost. So they're really popular when we put them on, and we do them with a sort of like dehydrated rhubarb chip and the crumble on top. So that's the other thing that I bring from my sort of chef background, is working with textures as well. It's not just sort of like all soft. I like sort of nice crumble on there, you know, maybe a bit of cream cheese frosting and then the rhubarb chip. because we eat with our eyes, but also like the texture just keeps us going back for more.
Well, it's very clear in this book too, in the pictures. There's more going on than just baked goods. Like these are thought out with like lots of different textures, colors. And y'all did styling for the photos in these books? Is that true?
Yeah, we did pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So it's all shot at the bakery, predominantly with natural light. I didn't want to avoid. So during Christmas, we're so busy at the bakery and it's really dark, you know, shorter days. I said, like, let's just take a break from doing the photos for like 3-4 months. So we just shot all of it in over a sort of one late summer and then the next spring, summer. So it was pretty full on because we only had Mondays. I remember for 2 months, we did 8 Mondays in a row. So that was like my day off from the bakery.
Oh,
Prep everything, shoot about 7 to 10 things on the Monday. So it was myself, Natasha, and our photographer, Janice Nicolay, who's extremely talented lady. She's done other cookbooks with Penguin. So she was able to guide us and knew the sort of shots that they would need for chapter openers and things like that. So, you know, we bought all the plateware and all the sort of props, even though there's a minimal amount of props. I wanted it to be all about the food, some nice ware, some nice boards, but really just about the food.
It's great. The styling's so good. And say the photographer's name again.
Janice Nicolay.
Shout out to Janice. Such good work.
Yeah.
And it leads us into now we've got biscuits, cookies, and tarts in our next chapter. And I've got my eyes on the Meyer lemon tart and the peanut butter and strawberry jam cookies. But what is a recipe someone might make from this chapter if they just pick up the book? If they just got it today, what's one from this chapter you'd say make that one first?
So there's cookies in that chapter.
Yeah.
Maybe the ginger cookie with the 3 types of sugar: molasses, coconut sugar, cane sugar. That one is probably one of the easier recipes in that chapter.
Yeah, really, really relatively easy, like a dough to make. You make the dough, chill it for a bit, ball them up, roll them in a bit of sugar, and bake them, and they're packed full of flavor. They're really delicious, and the texture on them, like slightly chewy, crunchy on the outside.
And what about a second recipe that they should tackle after they fall in love with that cookie?
Well, the chocolate is a classic, like Tash mentioned earlier, the dark chocolate oat cookie, and it has a bit of coffee in there, which we've been nervous about sort of our local customers reading because they feed them to their kids and say, I don't know, my kids love these cookies, but the coffee's there to bring out the chocolate flavor. It
gives it some depth. It's just a little bit of coffee too, right? It's not like you're
Exactly. So that's a great one. And then, like you mentioned, the strawberry jam with the peanut, well, PB&J. It's a classic combination, and the jam is inside. So when you break it, it's inside. So it's a little like fiddly, but once you've done, you know, shaped 1 or 2, then you get your rhythm and you're away.
Yeah, you get into it. And I see one with your name on it here, the apple tart tatin. Can you tell me about that?
So apple tart tatin is the French, you know, classic. So we just had fun with it. I apologize to any French listeners because
it's not traditionally vegan, is it? So making it vegan, we thought we could,
Very good. Yeah, and we've got a cherry and raspberry Bakewell tart. Anything with berries I get really into. I'm really excited about. And of course that's you've got a New York baked vanilla cheesecake with elderflower poached rhubarb. Again with the rhubarb. I'm loving the use of rhubarb in this book.
Totally. And that's actually to the biscuits. I think you can use the sort of ginger biscuits as the base. So if you have any leftovers, you know, you can use them for the cheesecake base. And that was a fun one to do with the rhubarb. Again, like beautiful plate, nice pink plate, you know, pink's a beautiful color. So we had fun with that one.
So good. Well, our next chapter, and I was surprised to see this in here, but I love it. It's just named simply gluten-free. Have you always had gluten-free options at BReD, or was it a process to sort of get it right and get it on the menu there?
Yeah, we knew that we would have to do some options. I mean, it's tough because we just have the one kitchen, so we can't make our products celiac friendly. You know, you need to have a gluten-free kitchen if you're going to make something completely devoid of gluten, especially because we have a tabletop mill that we use to mill some of our grain. And when you mill, you have airborne gluten for about 24 hours. In fact, I mean, the whole bakery is just covered in flour. Like, we're very, very clean and meticulous. But every day we have to wipe, like, even the lampshades, they get covered in flour.
Sure.
Even ones that aren't in the kitchen. So we're very careful about that. But we do love to try and cater for everyone. So we have soy-free recipes, nut-free recipes, and yes, gluten-free recipes. And so we just feel like it's important to be inclusive. We're not one of these places that are like, we make what we make and that's how it is. And if you don't like it, you know, but we want everyone to come in and enjoy vegan baking. So there's always at least one option, sometimes two, maybe even three, but usually two gluten-free treats. And then we have like a gluten-free loaf that we make as well.
You know what's interesting for me, and y'all might disagree with this, but when I go into, say it's a non-vegan restaurant, but they've got 2 or 3 vegan options, I'm actually thrilled that I'm not overwhelmed by options. I'm like, oh, there's 2 or 3 things. I was like, and if it's just me and my husband too, I'm like, well, we'll get 2.
Yeah.
And then we can try them both, and that's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
So as a gluten, if I were dedicated to gluten-free and I walked into your bakery and saw at least 2 options, I would be thrilled. I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to get. And I have no doubt that they would be delicious because I know what I'm walking into, essentially. So I love that you've got those options for people. And what are a couple recipes in this book in the gluten-free section that you think might surprise people?
The hummus cookie.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about the hummus cookie. I wondered if you would say that.
Flight to Mexico or something a few years ago and was just had a little notepad and was just brainstorming ideas. And I was like, what's the most like vegan thing? And I was like, well, we make hummus. So I've had like chickpea cookies before, but I've never had like a hummus cookie where I'm going to put everything in there except for the garlic.
Yeah.
So it's got chickpeas in there, fresh chickpeas, like boiled, crushed ones, chickpea flour, olive oil is the fat. It's got tahini in there. It's got lemon in there, juice and zest. And then you shape them and then you ball them in sesame seeds. So they're like coated in sesame seeds all round.
Hummus in a cookie.
Yeah, and it's like they're delicious. Again, they're kind of similar texture to like the ginger cookie, like crunchy on the outside, a little bit cakey, like chewy in the middle. They're delicious. They're really good. We might have to bring them back, I think.
I'm waiting for the day that you would say that. It was so funny when we brought them onto the menu a few years ago because, as you can imagine, people's reaction are like, hummus cookie? What? And then they would eat them and then they'd come back for them. And like
they still ask about them and they've been off the menu for like 2 years.
They've been off the menu since pre-pandemic, right? And we still have people come in and go, you guys doing the hummus cookie again yet? And I'm like, wow, you haven't been here for a while.
Or just let it go.
But yeah, that's music to my ears, Ed. So is that you've recorded it, it's gone live now,
Yeah,
right? So bringing it back.
Yes, it will come back.
It sounds like a fairly easy one to execute in terms of the other stuff that you make there.
Yeah, totally. If you've got everything like prepped and
yeah, I mean, I'm ready to make those right now. It just sounds interesting to me, so I'm curious.
Yeah, no, they are really delicious.
So good. And we've got a cast iron skillet cornbread in here, English flapjacks with strawberry jelly, double chocolate and tahini brownies. Whenever I see tahini with brownies, I get excited. It just sounds so good to me. Orange almond and cardamom cake, and raspberry and Earl Grey tea baked donuts. I mean, all the good stuff in here. And our next chapter is titled Zero Waste. So what makes these recipes zero waste in this chapter?
So we try and, at the bakery, we really monitor how much we make. A lot of bakeries around the world run on about a 25 to 30% wastage. We weren't happy with that, with the amount of sort of, hungry people in the world, starving people, or people that are food insecure. So anything we do have left is always donated to the local food bank or to the hospital. But we really monitor how much we make from the previous week, from the previous year. We have an online system that we're able to do that. So we wanted to put that across in the book and have a zero waste chapter. So, for example, when we make our hummus, you have the aquafaba, the cooking liquid from the chickpeas. So there's recipes in there for French meringue, Italian meringue, how you can use that as an egg replacer. And then obviously incorporating that hummus cookie into that when you've cooked the chickpeas. And then also we've got the sourdough discard recipes. So when you're making sourdough and feeding it, you know, it just grows and you end up having excess of this batter. So you can use that in pancakes, in waffles, crumpets. So you can use this sort of like discard in other recipes instead of just throwing it away, or crackers to have with cheese or things like that, dips.
That's great. And do you feel, because I'm just curious, at times when you think of zero waste, when people start to explore it, it starts to feel overwhelming for them. But do you find in your experience with it, with the bakery, that over time, it just like anything else, it sort of becomes second nature and gets easier? You're like, oh, well, we know we're going to do this with this now, as opposed to discarding it.
Yeah.
Time makes it easier, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like experience, like a dehydrator is a great tool. You know, if you have like peelings or trim, you know, you
Stick
can
it in the dehydrator.
and just come back to it another time, and you can incorporate that, you know, in your flour mix for some muffins or whatever it might be. Or for us, you know, we make compotes and we freeze them. So, or pickling or fermenting or all these, you know, there's definitely ways. So it was giving people an option when they start on their sourdough journey of, oh, hang on a minute, I've got this extra starter, like what can I do with it? And then they can flick to the, instead of having to jump on Google and search, it's there in the book.
Sure. That's great. Yeah, I've been taking my carrot peelings now whenever I peel carrots, and then I just squeeze them out and I just food process them, and then I make some crackers out of them in my dehydrator. My dehydrators are just magical, really, because also you can actually set it and forget it. You're like, I'll just put these on some trays and walk away, because you need to wait for several hours, you know. Exactly. So you're like, no, I'm just going to walk away from it. It's great. Well, I love that we get a glimpse into this with some recipes that go beyond the bread here, like the fermented rye crackers and roasted potato frittata. So what's a favorite for each of you in the zero waste chapter?
I think you've just listed it for me. The frittata is kind of, it's a really, we were talking about it earlier today, like it's such a good sort of lunch, dinner option. It's kind of based, I'm half Scottish, and we were doing research into like my history and things that we could add in there. We've got shortbread biscuits in there. And I came across in this really old book, it's over 100 years old, this sort of pilot, I think you would call it, or some sort of like potato rosti. And it's normally with eggs and like 50% potato. And I just started experimenting if I could use the sourdough discard, almost like the pancake batter, like the egg replacer, with cooked crushed potatoes, and cook it in like a little non-stick pan. So it's like really delicious, crispy, sort of rusty style pancake.
Delicious.
Yeah, it's not strictly baking, but it is using the sourdough.
Yeah. So, I mean, makes sense for the book.
Yeah.
Using something really from the beginning. That's great.
It takes an element from another chapter, the pea dip, and it sort of recommends using it, like having it with that. And then there's also the ricotta cheese, I think it is. So it's almost creating like a little lunch option that you can have, but taking elements from other chapters.
That's great. That's great. Natasha, is there a favorite of zero waste in the zero waste chapter for you?
Yeah, I think I really like the English pancakes. So in North America, pancakes are generally quite fluffy and cake-like. And in England, the pancakes I grew up with were a bit more like French crepes. But they're actually somewhere in between. They're thicker than a crepe, but they're smaller than that. There's somewhere in between an American pancake and a French crepe. And I don't know. It's just so sentimental to me. Like you know, some things you just grow up with as a kid, they're just absolutely delicious the rest of your life. That's one of those for me. We just like them real simple at home with some squeezed lemon and maple syrup, or just a little sprinkle of sugar. That's like one of the most traditional ways to eat English pancakes. Whereas I think with North American fluffy ones, you tend to have more like a blueberry compote and whipped cream or something. But yeah, I just like the English ones, just simple, and that's all you need. Yeah.
Yeah. And it takes you back a little bit. That's why I'm so obsessed with the rhubarb stuff. My mom grew rhubarb in our backyard when I was a kid. And here where I'm at now, I'm in Atlanta now. I was in New York for a long time, and like nobody knew what rhubarb was whenever I brought it up. And I was just like, wait, what? It's delicious. What do you mean? And back when I was a kid, we just like dipped it in sugar and ate it. which I can't believe. But like, and now I'm just like, when summer rolls around in spring, I'm like, I want to put it in but I can never find it. Like I struggle finding it.
Oh, right. I find that people that grow it don't know what to do with it. Like they just have so much of it. So it's really good to make jams and preserve it as well.
Yes, very good. I mean, a strawberry rhubarb jam, but yeah. So anyways, my point though is that rhubarb has a nostalgic like feeling for me too. So I get that vibe for sure. And we're winding down here with the dips, spreads, and accompaniments chapter. And this is where it's at for me. We love dips and sauces in this house. So I'm always a fan of a list of items that could potentially become staples in my fridge. Is there an item or two in here that is a staple in your home or at the bakery that made it into this book?
Well, the staple is the hummus. So it's a funny story, Dustin. Like we sort of say that hummus saved our business because before the pandemic, we were quite a new business. We hadn't even been open a year when we had to close down for the lockdown. And our spend per head was probably about $10. And then through the pandemic, we saw people wanted like slightly different products because they weren't eating out in the same way anymore. So we weren't doing our like so many like cinnamon buns and things like that. We were selling loaves of bread, we were selling bags of flour, and we had all these chickpeas left from the hummus cookie. And we're like, what are we going to do with all the chickpeas?
We can't sell that many cookies.
We're like, people don't want that many hummus cookies right now. So we started doing like more deli items, so like marinating olives and making hummus. And then when we reopened the bakery, we just kept those items, but we did it as an upsell. So anytime someone buys a loaf of bread, unlike any other bakery they've ever gone to, they go, any hummus or olives to go with that today? Any organic house-made hummus? Oh. And surprisingly, so many people say yes that we doubled our spend per head. So now we're like, wow, spend per head. So this was incredible for our revenue and, you know, for accelerating our business, just having an upsell like that. So the hummus is definitely a staple to the point where locals come in and they'll be like, I'll get the country sourdough. I don't need any hummus and olives today. You know, they on rote now.
Or some of them are like, thanks for reminding me. Yeah. I'll take 2 of each.
Yeah. Sure. Or they just come in for the hummus and olives. They're like, I don't need bread today. Just give me some of the hummus. So that is a staple. But and it is great. I mean, everyone loves hummus, but my favorite dip in there is probably the romesco, the almond and red pepper dip. I really like that one.
Nice.
I would say mine is the smoky eggplant. It's like a baba ganoush, but in a cast iron pan and sort of char it in that pan with the lid on, just a dry sort of casserole pot, and then let it cool down and blend it with sort of tahini and garlic and things. And it's just a really smoky, smooth, delicious dip.
That's this whole chapter just has such a great collection of items in here. And we've got roasted butternut squash dip with pumpkin seed and walnut. How do you say it?
Dukkha.
Dukkha. All right. Wanted to make sure I said it correct. What is it?
I think it's like a North African, it's normally like a dry sort of seed spice mix.
Okay.
And you can put it on for like texture. So you can put it on top of dips. You could have it with rice or anything you want, really. You can make that up and just have it as like a crunchy seasoning for anything like that, like dips and everything like that. Just when you have bread, instead of just having the bread and the soft dip, you get that sort of pop of the sesame and different spices.
All right. I'll have to explore it more. You've got some macadamia feta in here, carrot lox, got some cultured cashew pine nut and lemon ricotta, and smoky and spicy baked beans. Just such a nice collection in this entire book. And that is BReD, sourdough loaves, small breads, and other plant-based baking. Congratulations to you both on this stunning book. I really love it so much. And everyone, you heard it here first. The hummus cookies are coming back. So, I mean, I already have a reason to visit BReD when I'm in your neck of the woods, but now I'm really jonesing for a hummus cookie. So I'm going to have to attack that recipe on my own, but then hopefully have one made by you one day. But I'll ask you here to wrap it up. What's a book brag for both of you? I know the book's only been out for a couple days, but what is something that you're both most proud of when it comes to this book?
The fact that Penguin came to us was like a real accomplishment.
I'm proud of you for that. That's amazing.
Like, I don't read a lot of books, but Penguin, I know that. And, you know, I grew up reading puffin books as a kid. And that was a real compliment, just being like headhunted and being asked, and then also just having the freedom to do what we wanted. You know, I was like, I want to do this dips and accompaniments. I know it's not baking, but it's stuff to have on bread and with bread. And I think it would be a cool chapter. They were like, yeah, go for it. So just having the freedom to be able to do that, but having their support as well. And obviously they open a lot of doors for us as well. So for me, that was like a big pat on the back.
Yeah, that's awesome.
How about you?
Oh, okay. I think it's the recognition and support and interest from non-vegans in this book. For example, Chad Robertson from Tartine Bakery in San Francisco and LA and whatnot. He's like considered, I think, amongst many bakers to be sort of like the godfather of sourdough. Even though there were people making it before him and writing books on it before him, his book has kind of become like the go-to source for sourdough baking. And to have his endorsement on the book, and also Maurizio the baker, and then other non-vegan bakers like Vanessa Kimball from the Sourdough School, we've got a whole bunch of credible people that have put their name on our book and said how great it is. So that's really cool, because really, as vegans, like, we don't need to preach to the converted. What we need is all the non-vegans to get on board and start eating more vegan food and saying, yeah, it's actually really good. It's just as good or better than anything else you've ever eaten. So when we have those people prepared to say that in text on the book and public, you know, then that's really, really cool.
I love that. That is both great book brags, and I love hearing it too. Are you ready for your rapid fire round of questions?
Ready as I'll ever be.
All right, here we go. So I'll ask it, and you both can answer. Yes. So first one: waffles or pancakes?
Pancakes.
Pancakes.
Oh, agreement right away. Let's see how this pans out here the rest of the way. Okay, food on a skewer or a tiny spoon?
Tiny
skewer.
Spoon.
Last vacation you took?
Costa Rica.
Oh yeah. Oh, don't mention Costa Rica.
I got E. coli.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. But
and how long ago was this vacation?
In the
6
spring.
months.
Well, we just came back from the UK because we did the book launch there. But yeah, technically that was five months ago.
That was a work trip.
Yeah. That was work. But the Costa Rica one was all vacation, and then you got sick as well. So really just fun all around.
Yeah.
Great.
We did stop off in Texas, Austin, for a couple of days.
Austin was amazing. Yeah.
And
Austin's
had a great time there. And that's a phenomenal little vegan scene.
It's kind of, did you go to Counterculture? Or the Vegan Nom? Did you go check out tacos at the Vegan Nom?
No, we went
to this like little the
breakfast
food court with loads of like
trailers and stuff. Yeah. Yep.
And we had this most amazing milkshake.
Oh, great.
Really cosmic, hippie dippy van.
Cats in it, didn't it?
Had cats in it. Had
like little marshmallow cats.
Marshmallow cats. We're into that. And there was a taco truck there.
Okay.
And
lots of food.
We also went to this cafe that is famous for its cornbread, blue cornbread, and it's all vegan. Vegetarian.
It was really
nice. Yeah,
but it's very well known. But we had great times. We went and saw all the bats fly out from under the bridge.
Under the bridge? Yeah, I've done that too. Yeah.
Fire, sorry.
Quick fire. Come on, more questions.
Yes, more questions. So, hot sauce or barbecue sauce?
Hot sauce.
Probably barbecue sauce if it's homemade.
Okay. You got some parameters there. I'll accept it. First job you ever had?
A clown.
Newspaper boy.
That was unexpected, but thank you. Okay. Favorite spice to cook with?
Ooh.
Turmeric on my tofu scramble. Yeah.
Oh, I don't. Smoked paprika.
That is a good one, a common one, and same over here. I love it. Favorite thing about owning and operating a bakery?
Our community.
No, stuff at the delicious treats.
Both are good. Now, one of the most challenging things about owning and operating a bakery?
the hours.
Our community.
Yes. Yes, because it's so emotional. When you have like fresh bread from the oven, people go, oh my God, it's still warm, and they cuddle it like a baby and they're like on cloud 9. But if you sell out of that thing, then they throw their hands up in the air, they stamp their feet, and they have tantrums, and that can be quite difficult to deal with.
Turns around. It's a whole different story suddenly. Oh my gosh. Most frequently used tool in the kitchen?
Thermometer.
What is your most used emoji?
Oh, the bread.
The bread, for sure.
I don't even know if I've ever used the bread emoji, but I know it exists, but I can understand why that would be yours.
Hands up, bread.
Double hands up, bread.
That is so funny. Pie or cake?
Pie.
She has a different voice when she talks about pie. Did you notice that? She got pie.
It did get a little deeper, I noticed, yes.
Yeah, I'm going to say...
Can I be specific? Hot cherry pie.
Oh, delicious.
Pie with vanilla ice cream.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I'd agree with that pie.
Oh, it's okay. All right. An agreement there. And your last one, favorite board game?
Ooh, board game. Probably that Settlers of Catan for me.
I'm going to say Monopoly.
All right. Okay. You did it. Rapid fire. There you go. Well done.
That was fun.
Well, Ed and Natasha, you did it. Thank you so much. And please tell everyone where they can find BReD on social media and on the internet.
Thank you for asking. The website is edsbread.com, edsbred.com. And on the site, you can find all the links to our cookbook and to our socials. Our most active platform is Instagram at eds_bread, eds_BRED. We spell bread the wrong way. We spell bread like Ed, which is why there's no A in bread.
But now it's the right way. We're going to say it's the right way.
Anyway.
Yeah. It's like the emoji way of spelling it almost. I'm obsessed with that's your emoji. Well, everyone go get your copy of BReD, BReD, sourdough loaves, small breads, and other plant-based baking everywhere books are sold. And that's BReD, BReD. If you're curious about making plant-based bread, even in the slightest, this book is for you. And if you have someone in your life that you think has any interest in making bread, this makes an absolute home run Christmas gift this season. I'm telling you, it's a big, beautiful book full of fantastic photos and, of course, so much knowledge from the experts we're talking to here today. Ed and Natasha, I can't rave about this book enough. Thank you both so much for taking the time to chat with me today. And congratulations again this pub week on the release of your brand new book.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Buy one for yourself for your Christmas bakes, and buy one for your mum, and buy one for other people for a Christmas gift.
Yes. Please do us a favor and rate, review, and or subscribe to this podcast anywhere you're listening to it. The reviews really do help, and we really appreciate it. Also, remember, you can follow the podcast on Instagram at KeepOnCookingPod. You can also follow me at The Dustin Harder, and you can check out my website for my books and the Vegan Roadie web series and anything else you're interested in at DustinHarder.com. This has been a Muzzy Cat production.